who among us invented the hot raspberry drink. Not that it was a great culinary innovation, just add instant jello mix to boiling water and drink. It worked as dessert or as a morning sugar boost before a day of hiking. We were away from our parents and the control of any adults, making our own decisions about where to go, what to eat, when we slept, judging for ourselves what risks to take. At school, none of us were the cool kids. Only Danny played an organized sport, basketball, and he soon quit that to make time for our hikes. I was the skinniest of the group and usually the coldest, and I always felt like I was weaker than the others. Still, I liked the physical challenge and the feeling of autonomy. While hiking was becoming popular in our part of the country, not a lot of teenagers were traipsing off in the woods for 8 days on their own. That said, it was the 1970s, and attitudes toward parenting were looser than they are today. Kids generally had more freedom, and by the time I was in my early teens, my parents had accepted that I was different from many of my peers and had come to terms with the fact that I needed a certain amount of independence in making my way through the world. That acceptance had been hard-won, especially for my mother, but it would play a defining part in who I was to become. Looking back on it now, I'm sure all of us were searching for something on those trips beyond camaraderie and a sense of accomplishment. We were at that age when kids test their limits, experiment with different identities, and also sometimes feel a yearning for bigger, even transcendent experiences. I'd started to feel a clear longing to figure out what my path would be. I wasn't sure what direction it would take, but it had to be something interesting and consequential. Also in those years, I was spending a lot of time with a different group of boys. Kent, Paul, Rick, and I all went to the same school, Lakeside, which had set up a way for students to connect with a big mainframe computer over a phone line. It was incredibly rare back then for teenagers to have access to a computer in any form. The four of us really took to it, devoting all our free time to writing increasingly more sophisticated programs and exploring what we could do with that electronic machine. On the surface, the difference between hiking and programming couldn't have been greater, but they each felt like an adventure. With both sets of friends, I was exploring new worlds, traveling to places even most adults couldn't reach. Like hiking, programming fit me because it allowed me to define my own measure of success, and it seemed limitless, not determined by how fast I could run or how far I could throw. The logic, focus, and stamina needed to write long, complicated programs came naturally to me. Unlike in hiking, among that group of friends, I was the leader. Toward the end of my sophomore year, in June 1971, Mike called me with our next trip, 50 miles in the Olympic Mountains. The route he chose was called the Press Expedition Trail, after a group sponsored by a newspaper that had explored the area in 1890. Did he mean the same trip on which the men nearly starved to death and their clothes rotted on their bodies? Yes, but that was a long time ago, he said. 8 decades later, it would still be a tough hike. That year had brought a lot of snow, so it was a particularly daunting proposition. But since everyone else, Rocky, Riley, and Danny, was up for it, there was no way I was going to wimp out. Plus, a younger scout, a guy named Chip, was game. I had to go. The plan was to climb the Low Divide Pass, descend on the Quinault River, and then hike the same trail back, staying each night in log shelters along the way. 6 or 7 days total. The first day was easy, and we spent the night in a beautiful snow-covered meadow. Over the next day or two, as we climbed the Low Divide, the snow got deeper. When we reach the spot...
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it, at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.